Good morning. So happy to be here and quite an honor. As you read. So I'll skip that slide. I'll start by explaining that I am a doctoral student at the University of Southern California's School of Cinematic Arts. And my program has the mission to foster scholar practitioners who are able to combine historical and theoretical knowledge with creative and critical design production. And I like to provide this context early on because I think it provides an overall picture of the space that I inhabit, which is a hybrid of creative practice and scholarship. And so if I were to in very broad strokes summarize my work, I'd say that it's about the intersection of design and social justice, and I think really represented my interest very much so by one of my favorite designers' quotes, that it is no longer, design is no longer about one designer, one client, one solution, one place. The effect of this is to imagine a future for design that is both more modest and much more ambitious as well. I'd like to start with a project called Darfur, which Jane mentioned. The project launched in 2006, and in the field of game development and game studies, this is a very, very, very long time ago. But this project did set a path for me that in many ways I'm still continuing to explore till this day. So with that said, I'll show some video.
Darfur is an online game that attempts to put the player in the shoes of one of the 2.5 million refugees who are struggling to survive in the Darfur region of the Sudan. Players learn about some of the challenges refugees and displaced persons face, as well as how to take action that can help stop the crisis. The player leaves the relative secure confines of the camp in order to find water in the desert landscape. It speaks of children who bear the responsibility of foraging for water because their chances of survival are deemed greater if captured by the Sudanese militias, as women are routinely raped while foraging essentials for their families, and men face a high risk of being murdered. Should your avatar not succeed, you can try again. You must choose another of the remaining 7 avatars, however, as your previous one has perished. In the camp space, you can view testimonials of other displaced persons now living in shelters alongside your avatar, and you must harvest food and build shelters to sustain the camp, all the while mindful that a threat of an attack on your community by Sudan's militia is ever present. You can help maintain a low threat level by communicating with your social network through an interface that links directly to your address book. The more friends you invite, the better the chances of virtual survival. To further lower the threat level, you can write letters to President Bush and petition your representatives in Congress to support legislation that aids the people of Darfur. The third and final level of the game's research and design incorporates multiplayer cooperative gameplay based on the rebuilding of a village via the harvesting of crops by the community of Darfuri avatars. This cooperative gameplay incorporates a design based on the group effort required to organize a divestment campaign in the player's student campus. According to server traffic numbers, 1.2 million people played the game within the first year of its launch, and tens of thousands participated in the activist tools woven into the gameplay. For a growing number of people, gaming is a logical medium for rigorous communication and social outcome. Together with the affinity that the player community experiences, distances may be shortened, both physical and ideological.
Video. You know, again, it was 2006, and at a time, a little bit hard to imagine now, but before social games and social platforms like Facebook and even trends like gamification really took off, Darfur did seek to intertwine the gameplay itself with mechanisms, simple mechanisms, yet effective mechanisms that might have an impact on the real situation on the ground. And so, for example, in order to progress in the gameplay, at certain points, you are presented with options to contact members of the United States Congress and the President, and to share information that you were learning about the game with your friends. Again, common tropes now, but not at the time. And our working theory of change at the time adhered to a methodology by which the virtual and the real world present a coextensive space rather than a plurality of worldviews. And so we did not see and don't see the game space as necessarily fictionalized by definition, nor did we see the physical world as impervious to play and to play actions. The experience of working on Darfur is Dying led me and some of my colleagues to start a collaborative design studio called Take Action Games. I'll quickly show a couple of those projects and hopefully move a little quicker through them. The first one is Replay Finding Zoe. Replay Finding Zoe starts with a survey feature that collects statistics of the player's responses. While evoking a sense of community for the player, the survey helps Metrack understand some of what players are bringing to the game before they play it, and how this may have altered after having played it. This was in collaboration with an organization called Metrack,
and her friends that act on their feelings of
and I can explain
in order
who
to
they
help
are in a
them.
moment.
The game attempts to convey that while it can be challenging to act out on an injustice around us, it is definitely our greatest power to care and take action. Throughout the neighborhood, you encounter plenty of folks spreading ridiculous rumors about Zoe, and you can either productively communicate with these characters or you can likewise antagonize them. In the midst of sexist and intimidating confrontations, the game highlights the use of words to resolve and to surmount.
And this was a 2007 launch.
If you do catch up to Zoe, you and the growing number of friends that have decided to join you can demonstrate to her that she has many friends who miss and care for her and who have done much legwork and collected a list of services that offer help for young people in her situation. The message you bring to Zoe is that an unequal dating relationship is not a healthy one, and that most importantly, she is not alone and help is out there for both persons involved in the relationship. The project was motivated by global statistics demonstrating that violence against women and girls is a pervasive health and social problem. Research shows that children are socialized into rigid notions of gender roles at an early age, contributing to epidemic levels of violence against women and girls. And as such, it was critical that the game serve as a stage for players to challenge gender stereotypes, identify warning signs of violence, and learn of community services. Various accompanying educational materials are also available, encouraging the game's incorporation into school curriculum, community programming, home life, and play.
So that was Replay Finding Zoe. Metrack is an organization based in Ontario, Canada, and they're very well known as an organization that helps prevent violence against diverse women, youth, and children. And Take Action Games worked with them on this game, which specifically addresses abuse and teen dating relationships, which they were at the time seen as a very, very sort of, there was a groundswell of issues and a groundswell of this particular issue sort of coming to light from their perspective. So our collaboration with Metrack has continued and it is quite fruitful. I'll briefly mention, together we went on to speculate on and write about the application of what's called the anti-oppressive framework or anti-oppressive principles in game creation. These principles are typically associated with social work and community development, and Metrack adheres to them in their community work. And so we argue, it was a thought experiment, and we argue that it is an interesting approach, particularly for games, not in the design and in the development, in the actual creation of the games, particularly in games that in one way or another seek to spotlight and challenge social power imbalances and structural injustices. We're working with them on a mobile app. It's not really a game, it's an app, with the goal to increase the public's general awareness about sexual harassment, support women in everyday instances of sexual harassment, whether at work or in public spaces, and provide key information about legislation and community services that are relevant to victims of sexual harassment. And so users can input general information about the situation of harassment that they are in, and a relevant response will be generated. And the responses are provided by Metrac and based on their, of course, their advocacy work, but also on numerous surveys that they put out there in their social networks. And also users anonymously will be able to contribute and share their responses, as well as longer personal stories that they may have. The next project is in partnership with UN Women. It is a quiz, an online quiz, to help promote their Say No Unite campaign, as well as help foreground numerous United Nations reports that conclude critical facts and figures about violence against women and girls globally, yet are often, the result is that they're often not engaged with by others than those highly specialized in this field. This video comes from the web, so I hope that it works. Let me try this.
The Say No Unite campaign is a UN Women global advocacy and communications platform on ending violence against women and girls. Its global action counter symbolizes the growing momentum of actions taken by organizations and individuals around the world to end violence against women and girls. The Say No Unite online quiz tests your knowledge about this issue and encourages you to share it with your friends and networks in order to spread awareness. Every point you score while playing the game counts towards the global action counter. The questions and their corresponding units of supporting information have their primary sources cited and are accessible by clicking Source on the screen's bottom right. These sources consist of numerous United Nations reports, many of which are directly accessible. As gameplay progresses, the momentum grows. Men and women around the world walk united towards shared goals, and actions symbolically grow. The quiz is designed to be simple and accessible in order to engage a wide audience on the issues surrounding violence against women and girls and the importance of women's participation in conflict resolution and peace building. A user-friendly interface allows for customization of the quiz content, and additional quizzes can be made in support of other campaigns by the UN or its many international partnering organizations.
The next project this is current research conducted with colleagues at USC, Benjamin Stokes and Jeff Watson, with support from Intel's People and Practices Research Lab, and where we seek to take a broad look at the field of mobile and curate locative and pervasive projects across the often very siloed dimensions of art, learning, and activism. Thus, we call it the Civic Tripod. And we argue that in order to not isolate, we don't really necessarily want to isolate case studies, but rather hopefully build an interdisciplinary bridge that improve game design, impact assessment, and ultimately, hopefully, civic participation itself. And the last project I'll show is called Clean Up Wall Street. This is a real-world game, meaning it's a physical game meant to be played in the real world. Specifically here, designed to be played in the financial district in Lower Manhattan of New York City. It is a game event inspired by the global financial crisis and explores the actions that led financial institutions to endanger the health of the global economy. It's a project conducted with several colleagues in my program and conceived actually many months ago, last spring. And it is very interesting for us to see this design and the impulse that we had in creating it in context to the current Occupy movements. Players assume the roles of commodity traders and credit rating agents and compete to trade and sell the most in a frenzy before the inflated system bursts and time runs out. We were informed by and inspired by, to a great degree, by Charles Ferguson's documentary Inside Job, and in many ways, the game takes as its inspiration for its core mechanics, the central aspects that the film explores in detail. And in doing so, I think this could be called a documentary game, a concept that I'm also very invested in. The design is in progress. One interesting thing about it is that the rules are very complicated. And while perhaps it's absolutely fair to say that any game that takes on this content is going to be necessarily highly convoluted, it is still, of course, a design challenge to get at the right balance of metaphor and playability. And we'll be running it, not in Wall Street, but in the spaces of Occupy LA soon. And that's it. Thank you. Thanks.